Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Now, let's pause here and take a step back to understand why this moment mattered so much. Emily had no idea that the man she had just embarrassed herself in front of was actually Liam Parker, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech company, living a life completely different from her own. But sometimes, the universe has a way of bringing people together in the most unexpected ways. The next day, Emily tried to shake off the embarrassment from her blind date mishap. She couldn't help but replay the awkward moment over and over in her mind. But she had more pressing matters to deal with. She had a job to get to, bills to pay, and rent that was due next week. Her small apartment felt even smaller that morning as she stared at the pile of bills on her kitchen table. The clock ticked relentlessly as she pulled on her worn-out shoes, grabbed her bag, and left her apartment. The subway ride was as packed as usual, and as she stood there, holding onto the overhead bar, her mind wandered back to the man she had mistakenly spoken to the night before. What was his story? Why hadn't he corrected her right away? Was he really just another lonely man on a blind date? Or had she somehow misjudged him completely? She shook her head, pushing the thoughts away. There was no time to dwell on the past. She had a shift to work, and she couldn't afford to waste any more energy thinking about it. Later that afternoon, as Emily served coffee to a table of regulars at the small cafe, her phone buzzed. She glanced down at the screen, surprised to see a text message from an unknown number. "Hi Emily, this is Liam. I know it was a mix-up last night, but I'd like to see you again. Coffee maybe?" Her heart skipped a beat. Liam? The guy from the restaurant? The guy who, for some strange reason, hadn't immediately corrected her? She read the message again, unsure of how to respond. Was this some kind of prank? Or was he serious?
After a moment of hesitation, she quickly typed out her response, "Sure, coffee sounds nice." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Her shift ended, and as she made her way to the coffee shop Liam had suggested, she found herself pacing back and forth outside. Was this a bad idea? What if he was just looking for a quick laugh at her expense? What if he was just some rich guy with nothing better to do than mess with someone like her? The thoughts swirled in her head, but before she could convince herself to walk away, she saw him. Liam. He was sitting at a small corner table, looking just as polished as he had the night before. But today, his appearance was more relaxed jeans and a casual sweater, rather than the sharp suit he had worn at the restaurant. His eyes met hers as she approached, and he smiled, that same warm, easy smile that had made her feel at ease despite the awkwardness of the night before. "Hi," Emily said, slipping into the chair across from him. "Thanks for the invite." Liam smiled again, pushing a cup of coffee toward her. "I'm glad you came. Thanks for agreeing." They sat there for a moment, sipping their drinks in comfortable silence. Finally, Emily spoke up. "So, what do you really do? I mean, you said you work in tech, but that's about it." She raised an eyebrow, trying to keep things casual. He chuckled softly. "I work for a tech startup. Mostly business stuff, coding, apps, that kind of thing." She smiled at the vagueness of his answer. "Sounds like something I'd never understand." He leaned back in his chair, his smile widening. "I could teach you if you wanted, or at least explain it in simpler terms." The suggestion took her by surprise. "Yeah, maybe one day," she said, shrugging. "I'd probably mess it up anyway." Their conversation continued, light and easy, as they discussed everything from her life as a waitress to his experiences working in the tech world. The hours flew by, and for the first time in a long while, Emily found herself actually enjoying the company of someone she barely knew. She was so caught up in the moment that she almost forgot about the awkwardness of their first encounter. It was as if the mix-up from a night before had never happened, replaced instead by a connection that felt genuine.
But then, as they both stood up to leave, the reality of who he really was, what he really did, started to settle back in. She didn't know how much of this was real or if he was just playing some kind of game. As they stepped outside the coffee shop, Emily glanced at Liam. "I'm glad you invited me," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I didn't know what to expect, but this was nice." Liam nodded, his expression softening. "I'm glad you came, too. I hope we can do this again sometime." He handed her a business card, and she looked at it, shocked to see his name and the title beneath it, Liam Parker, CEO of Parker Tech. Her heart dropped as she realized the truth: the man sitting across from her wasn't just any guy. He was a millionaire. The millionaire she had mistakenly spoken to at the restaurant the night before. She felt her face flush with embarrassment again, but this time, it wasn't just about her mistake. It was about everything she had just learned. She looked up at Liam, but before she could say anything, he gave her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry about it," he said, sensing her discomfort. "I'm just Liam, all right?" He gave her a wink and turned to walk away. "See you around, Emily. I'll text you soon." As she stood there, watching him walk off, Emily felt a rush of emotions. Shock, confusion, and even a hint of excitement. This wasn't the story she expected to be part of. But maybe, just maybe, it was one she was meant to live. It had been a few days since Emily had met Liam, and she couldn't stop thinking about him. The whole situation still felt surreal. The man she had thought was just another lonely guy on a blind date turned out to be a millionaire. A tech CEO, no less. She had to keep reminding herself that their conversation hadn't been some elaborate joke or a test, but the truth was hard to ignore. She found herself looking at the business card he had given her, the name and title staring back at her. Liam Parker, CEO of Parker Tech. He had mentioned he'd text her soon, but after that night, she hadn't heard anything from him. Maybe he had lost interest, maybe he had just wanted to be polite. Either way, Emily wasn't sure if she was ready for whatever came next. Was she really ready to dive into the world of high-tech CEOs and million-dollar deals? Or was she just fine in her own, simpler life? But the text did come.
It came later that week, out of the blue, and it startled her as she sat on her couch after a long shift. "Hey Emily, it's Liam. Would you like to meet for lunch? I'd love to chat again." Emily stared at her phone for a moment, hesitating. Was he just being friendly? Or was there something more to this? Her heart raced as she thought about the possible implications. She couldn't deny that the idea of seeing him again excited her, but the fear of embarrassing herself, or worse, falling into some kind of trap, was still there. After what felt like an eternity, she finally typed her response, "Sure, lunch sounds good." She hit send, instantly regretting how quickly she had agreed. But it was too late now. She had already said yes. The day of their meeting, Emily stood in front of the mirror, unsure of what to wear. She didn't want to look out of place, but she didn't have much to choose from. Her wardrobe consisted of the essentials clothes that fit her budget, not her dreams. She settled on a simple blouse and jeans, hoping it would be enough. She didn't want to try too hard, but she also didn't want to look like she didn't care. She arrived at the cafe Liam had suggested, her nerves on edge as she spotted him sitting at a table near the window. He was dressed casually again, in a soft sweater and jeans, looking comfortable and at ease. He looked up as she approached and smiled warmly, that same welcoming smile from the first time they met. "Hi, Emily," he greeted her as she sat down. "You look great." His words were genuine, and Emily couldn't help but smile in return, though she felt a little self-conscious. "Thanks, you too," she replied, trying to sound confident. As she sat across from him, the conversation flowed easily, just like it had during their first meeting. They talked about work, about life, and about their hopes for the future. Emily felt more at ease with each passing minute, her initial nerves slowly fading away. She didn't feel like the waitress from a small cafe anymore. She felt like she belonged here in this conversation with Liam. After lunch, they decided to take a walk in the park nearby. The sun was shining, and there was a light breeze in the air. It was a perfect day, and Emily couldn't help but enjoy the peaceful moment.
She had almost forgotten that Liam was a millionaire, that he was a person with a whole world of his own that was so different from hers. As they walked, Liam asked her about her dreams, her art, and the things she wanted to do in life. She talked about her plans to one day open her own art studio, and how she had been saving up for years, but it felt like a distant dream. He listened intently, offering encouragement and support as she spoke. "I think you can do it," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "You're already doing great, Emily. Just keep going." His words, simple as they were, filled her with a sense of warmth and possibility. For the first time in a long time, she started to believe in herself again. But then, as they reached the end of the park, the reality of their situation came rushing back. He was Liam Parker, a millionaire, and she was just Emily, a waitress with a dream. Could they really have anything in common? Could this connection they were building be real, or was she just another person in his world of convenience and wealth? Before she could voice any of her doubts, Liam turned to her, his expression serious but kind. "I know this may sound strange," he said, "but I think you're special, Emily. I really do. And I'd like to get to know you better, if you're open to it." Emily's heart skipped a beat. Was this really happening? Was Liam, the tech CEO, actually interested in her for who she was, not just for the fact that she was a pretty face? She had to take a deep breath before she could answer. "I'd like that too," she said, her voice quiet but filled with sincerity. "I'd like that a lot." As she spoke the words, she couldn't help but feel a wave of hope washing over her. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something real. As they parted ways that afternoon, Emily couldn't help but smile. She had no idea where this would go, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like her life was taking a new direction. A direction that, despite all the uncertainty and fear, might just lead to something beautiful. The following week, Emily found herself in a routine. Work at the cafe was steady, and her shifts seemed to blur together. But there was one thing that kept her heart fluttering: Liam.
He had texted her a couple of times since their walk in the park, asking how her day was going or if she was free for lunch again. Each time, she felt a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. It was easy to forget, for just a moment, that he was a billionaire, a CEO. He made it feel effortless, like they were just two people getting to know each other. Yet, every time she looked at her phone and saw his name, a voice inside her reminded her of the vast gap between their worlds. That afternoon, Emily was cleaning tables when she got a text from Liam. "Hey, I have something I want to show you. Would you like to meet me at the gallery tomorrow?" She stared at the message, her heart racing. A gallery? She had been at galleries before, but never something like this. She had no idea what to expect, but she didn't want to say no. She replied quickly, agreeing to meet him the next day. The thought of stepping into that world, one so different from her own, made her both nervous and excited. The next day, she dressed carefully. She chose a dress that wasn't too fancy, but just nice enough for a gallery. She tried to ignore the voice in her head that told her she was out of place. When she arrived, she was surprised to see Liam waiting outside the entrance. He was dressed in a dark suit, looking effortlessly elegant. He smiled when he saw her and waved her over. "You look amazing," he said, his tone genuine. She blushed, not knowing how to respond. She had gotten used to hearing compliments from customers at the cafe, but coming from him, they felt different. She felt her nerves settling a little as they walked into the gallery together. Inside, the space was breathtaking. The high ceilings, the soft lighting, the artwork hanging on the walls, everything felt polished, sophisticated. Emily's heart skipped a beat as she looked around, amazed by the beauty of it all. But what took her by surprise wasn't the gallery itself. It was the fact that Liam was so at ease in this world, like he belonged here. As they walked through the exhibits, Liam casually pointed out various pieces, explaining the artist's backgrounds and the stories behind each painting. Emily felt a little out of her depth, but Liam never made her feel that way. He was patient, explaining things with such enthusiasm that it was hard not to get caught up in his excitement.
"So, what do you think?" he asked, his eyes meeting hers after a few moments of silence. Emily hesitated before answering. "It's beautiful. I mean, I don't really know much about art, but I can definitely feel the passion in all of it. You can tell that each piece means something to the artist. Liam smiled, clearly pleased with her answer. Exactly. Art is about feeling. It's not always about understanding everything, but about connecting with it. Emily nodded, impressed by his insight. The way he spoke about art made her feel like she was seeing it with new eyes, like there was a whole world she had been missing. They continued to wander the gallery, stopping in front of a few more pieces. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Liam than he was letting on. He was so different from anyone she had ever met. His confidence, his intelligence, it all seemed effortless. But what about her? What could someone like him possibly see in her? As they stopped in front of another painting, Emily couldn't hold it in any longer. Liam, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Why me? He turned to her, his expression softening. What do you mean? He asked, genuinely curious. She took a deep breath. I'm just a waitress. You're a CEO. I'm not in your world. Liam took a step closer to her, his eyes locking with hers. Emily, he said, his voice steady, it's not about worlds or status. It's about connection. I like spending time with you because I can be myself. No pretenses, no business talk. Just you and me. The sincerity in his words made her heart flutter. For the first time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she was more than what she had always thought of herself. As they continued to walk through the gallery, Emily felt a shift inside her. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel out of place. With Liam, she felt seen, heard, and valued. It was as if all the doubts and insecurities she had been carrying with her for so long were starting to melt away. Maybe this was the start of something real. Maybe they could make it work, despite their differences. Liam was right, maybe it wasn't about worlds or status. It was about the connection they shared, and in that moment, she knew she didn't want to let it go. As the afternoon turned into evening, Liam walked her back to her apartment.
When they reached the door, he turned to her, his expression serious but kind. I'm really glad we did this, he said. I hope we could do it again soon. Emily smiled, feeling her heart race once more. I'd like that, she said, her voice soft. I'd like that a lot. And with that, he kissed her cheek, a gentle but meaningful gesture that left her breathless. She stood in her doorway, watching him walk away, a new sense of hope rising in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something beautiful. The following days passed in a blur for Emily. She couldn't stop thinking about Liam and the unexpected connection they shared. Every time her phone buzzed, she hoped it was a message from him, but life at the cafe kept her occupied. She had bills to pay, customers to serve, and dreams she still couldn't quite reach. But when the messages came, they felt like a spark of light in her busy, routine-filled days. Liam didn't just check in with her May plans. He asked if she wanted to join him for lunch or a walk, and each time, she found herself saying yes without hesitation. Despite the deepening connection, Emily still struggled with a nagging feeling that she was living in a world that wasn't meant for her. She was just a waitress, after all. Liam was a CEO, a millionaire worlds apart in every sense. But every time they met, it felt easy, like they were two people who just happened to find each other, and nothing else mattered. One afternoon, as she wiped down the counter at the cafe, Emily's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a simple message from Liam. I've been thinking about you. How about we take a trip out of town this weekend? A change of scenery sounds good. Her heart raced as she read the words. A weekend getaway? Emily had never imagined something like that, especially with someone she had only met a few weeks ago. But the idea of spending more time with Liam, of getting away from the daily grind and the noise of the city, was too tempting to ignore. She quickly typed a reply, trying to act casual. That sounds amazing. Where are we going? The excitement bubbling up in her chest was hard to contain, but she forced herself to stay calm. She couldn't get her hopes up too much. This could just be another casual trip, a way to pass the time. Still, as she hit send, She couldn't help but smile.
The weekend arrived faster than she expected, and before she knew it, Emily was standing outside her apartment, suitcase in hand, waiting for Liam. When he pulled up in his sleek black car, she couldn't help but feel a rush of anticipation. "Hey," he said as he got out of the car, looking effortlessly cool in a leather jacket and jeans. "You ready for this?" Emily smiled, feeling a little self-conscious but mostly excited. "I think so," she replied, her heart racing in her chest. The drive was easy, comfortable, and they spent the entire journey talking, laughing, and just enjoying each other's company. There was no pressure, no pretenses, just two people getting to know each other more deeply. They arrived at a small, charming bed and breakfast nestled in the countryside. The place was quiet, surrounded by nature and rolling hills that stretched as far as the eye could see. It felt like a world away from the city, and for the first time in a while, Emily felt a sense of peace. The owner of the bed and breakfast greeted them with a warm smile and led them to their room, a cozy space with a big window that overlooked the fields. Emily couldn't believe she was here, in this beautiful, peaceful place, with Liam. As the day unfolded, they explored the nearby trails, enjoying the fresh air and the quiet beauty of the countryside. They talked about everything: her hopes, his work, their dreams, and by the time the sun began to set, Emily felt like she had known Liam for years, not just weeks. But there was one thing that still lingered in the back of her mind. Was this real? Was Liam really as genuine as he seemed, or was she just another person in his world, another fleeting connection? That evening, they sat outside on the patio, watching the stars begin to fill the sky. The air was cool, but the warmth of the moment kept Emily comfortable. Liam turned to her, his expression soft. "You know, Emily," he began, his voice quiet, "I never expected this. I wasn't looking for anything serious, but spending time with you these past few days has made me realize something. I want to get to know you more. I want to see where this goes." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected him to say that.
She had been so focused on her own insecurities, on the differences between their worlds, that she hadn't stopped to think about the possibility that he might feel the same way. "I don't know what to say," she stammered. "I never thought someone like you would want to spend time with someone like me." Liam reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "Emily, you're exactly who I want to be with. I don't care about what you do or where you come from. I care about who you are." His words hit her like a wave, and she felt a tear slip down her cheek. She hadn't realized just how much she needed to hear that. It was the reassurance she had been searching for, even if she hadn't known it until now. As they sat there, hand in hand, Emily realized that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't some fleeting connection. Maybe this was something real, something worth fighting for. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid to find out. The next few weeks felt like a whirlwind for Emily. She had never imagined that her life could change so quickly, yet here she was, spending more time with Liam, a man whose world was so different from hers. Despite their differences, every moment they shared felt real. Their time together was effortless lunch dates, long walks, and late-night conversations that stretched into the early hours of the morning. They talked about everything, from their childhoods to their dreams for the future. Emily had never felt so understood, so truly seen, and for the first time, she started to let go of her insecurities. But even with all the moments of connection, there was still one question lingering in her mind. Was this really it? Was this the beginning of something lasting? Or was it just a temporary escape from their separate realities? One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Emily found herself lying in bed, scrolling through the messages Liam had sent her throughout the day. She smiled at a silly text he had sent, teasing her about her obsession with coffee. But as she sat there, her phone buzzing in her hand, she felt a mix of excitement and dread. She had just received an invitation to attend a charity gala with him. Her heart skipped a beat. The gala was a prestigious event, full of socialites and business elites. It wasn't the kind of place she ever thought she would belong.
She had never felt out of place in a cafe full of people, but the thought of walking into that world, Liam's world, made her nervous. Would she fit in? Would they see her as just a waitress, someone who didn't belong in their world? She tried to push the thoughts away, but the doubt gnawed at her. She knew she couldn't let this opportunity slip by. This was Liam's world, and she was a part of it now whether she was ready or not. She texted Liam back, agreeing to go, though she couldn't shake the nervousness that had settled in her chest. The night of the gala arrived faster than she expected, and Emily found herself standing in front of her closet, unsure of what to wear. She wanted to look nice, but she didn't want to look like she was trying too hard. After a long while of searching through her clothes, she settled on a simple black dress that she felt comfortable in. It wasn't too fancy, but it was elegant enough for the event. When she arrived at the venue, Liam was waiting for her outside, dressed in a sharp tuxedo, looking every bit the part of the CEO he was. His eyes lit up when he saw her, and he stepped forward to greet her with a warm smile. "You look stunning," he said, taking her hand. "I'm glad you could make it." Emily smiled, feeling her nerves calm just a little. "Thanks. I'm a little out of my element, but I'm happy to be here." He laughed softly. "Don't worry, you'll fit right in. Just be yourself." As they entered the venue, Emily was immediately struck by how different everything felt. The grand ballroom was filled with elegantly dressed people, and a soft glow of chandeliers lit the room. Waiters passed by with trays of champagne, and the soft murmur of conversations echoed around her. It was a world of luxury, a world she had never been a part of, and as she walked beside Liam, she couldn't help but feel a little out of place. But Liam was there, and he made her feel like she belonged. As they mingled with guests, he introduced her to several people, and she quickly realized that they were all impressed by her sincerity and down-to-earth nature. No one seemed to care that she was a waitress or that she didn't have a degree from some Ivy League school. It was as if they were seeing her for who she truly was, not for the job she did or the life she came from.
As the night wore on, Emily found herself laughing and enjoying the company of Liam and his friends. She wasn't nervous anymore. She was just herself. And that's when Liam took her hand and led her to the center of the ballroom. "I want to dance with you," he said, his voice soft but sincere. Emily's heart fluttered. She had never danced in a place like this, but there was no hesitation. She took his hand, and they moved together effortlessly. In that moment, everything else faded away, the doubts, the fears, the difference between their worlds. All that mattered was the music, the feeling of his arms around her, and the connection they shared. As the song ended and the applause from the crowd faded, Liam looked at Emily, his eyes full of something she couldn't quite place. He stepped back, gently holding her hands in his. "Emily," he began, his voice serious yet tender, "I know we come from different worlds, but what we've shared, it's real. I want this. I want to be with you." Emily felt a rush of emotion rise in her chest. She had known all along that this was something special, but hearing him say it out loud made everything feel so much more real. She smiled, her heart racing. "I want this too, Liam, more than anything." And in that moment, under the glittering lights of the ballroom, surrounded by the people of his world, Emily realized that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The weeks that followed the gala were a whirlwind of emotions for Emily. She and Liam spent more time together than ever before. Long dinners, walks through the city, and quiet nights spent talking until the early hours of the morning. But as much as she felt like she was falling for him, a part of her still couldn't shake the fear that this was all too good to be true. He was a millionaire, a CEO, and she was still just a waitress from a small cafe. Every time they were together, she couldn't help but wonder if he truly saw her for who she was or if she was just someone filling a void in his life. She kept reminding herself that their connection was real, that it wasn't just about money or status, but sometimes the doubt lingered. Was she just a temporary distraction for him, or could this be something lasting? One evening, Liam invited her to his penthouse. She had been there a few times before, but tonight felt different.
The moment she stepped inside, the opulence of the place took her breath away. The tall windows, the modern artwork on the walls, the sleek, minimalist furniture was everything she had imagined and more. Liam was standing by the window, staring out at the city skyline. When he saw her, he turned and smiled, his eyes lighting up. "You made it," he said, walking over to greet her. He looked perfect, as always polished, confident, yet there was something in his eyes that made her feel like he was just as uncertain as she was. As they sat down on the couch, Liam poured them both a glass of wine, and the conversation drifted from work to personal dreams. Emily felt like she was in a dream herself, sitting here with him, surrounded by luxury, yet feeling like she was on the edge of something much bigger than herself. She had always been careful, never fully letting anyone in, but with Liam, it felt different. He had a way of making her feel like she belonged, like she was more than just the job she did or the life she had. Emily, Liam began, his voice steady, I've been thinking a lot about us, about where this is going. Her heart skipped a beat. Was he about to say what she thought he was going to say? She glanced at him, trying to read his expression, but it was hard to tell. What do you mean? She asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam set down his glass, his gaze never leaving hers. I know we've only been seeing each other for a short time, but I feel like we have something real. I care about you, Emily. More than I ever expected. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had been waiting for him to say it, but hearing the words out loud was almost too much to take in. She had been so afraid of this moment, afraid of being vulnerable, of getting hurt. But looking at him, she realized that the fear she had been carrying all this time was slowly fading away. I care about you too, she finally said, her voice shaking just a little. More than I thought I could. There was a long pause as they just looked at each other, the weight of their unspoken feelings hanging in the air. It was as if the world around them had disappeared, leaving just the two of them, alone in that moment. Liam reached over, taking her hand in his. I want to be with you, Emily, he said, his voice filled with sincerity.
I don't know what the future holds, but I want to take this step with you. Together. Emily's heart swelled with emotion as she squeezed his hand, knowing that this was the moment when everything changed. She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I don't want to lose what we have, but I also don't want to hide anymore. Liam smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You don't have to hide, he said gently. I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure it out together. In that moment, Emily knew that whatever happened next, they would face it side by side. The fear that had held her back for so long began to melt away, replaced by a quiet confidence that this was just the beginning of something beautiful. As they sat there, hand in hand, Emily felt like she had found a part of herself she had been missing. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of what the future held. She had Liam by her side, and together, they could face anything. With that thought, she leaned in and kissed him, feeling the warmth of his lips against hers, the certainty of their connection settling deep within her heart. The following days, after their heartfelt conversation, felt like a dream to Emily. She had never imagined that she could feel so secure, so at peace with someone. The fear of not belonging, of not being enough, had all but faded away. She spent more time at Liam's penthouse, and each time they were together, she felt more like she was stepping into a world that, once foreign and intimidating, was becoming her own. They spent weekends exploring the city, sometimes getting lost in the little streets, laughing together over coffee, and sharing stories about their lives. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt truly seen, not as a waitress, but as Emily, the woman Liam cared about. But as much as Emily tried to push the doubts aside, they still lingered in the back of her mind. Liam had made his intentions clear, cared about her, wanted to be with her, but the truth was she was still learning about this world he lived in. A world that was far different from the life she had known. It wasn't just about the luxury or the fancy events, it was the people who inhabited it, the expectations, the pressures.
And Emily couldn't help but wonder if, someday, her simple life, her small dreams, would somehow feel too small for him. But every time those thoughts crept into her mind, Liam would reassure her. He would remind her that what they shared was real, that it wasn't about the wealth or status, it was about the connection they had found in each other. One evening, as they walked along the waterfront, the city lights sparkling in the distance, Liam turned to her, his expression thoughtful. Emily, he began, his voice soft but serious, I know this may sound like I'm rushing things, but I want to ask you something important. Emily's heart raced. "What is it?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Liam took a deep breath, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause around them. "I don't want to keep you in limbo, wondering what this is. I want to know if you'd consider building a life with me. Not just for a few months, or a few years, but for the long haul. I'm asking if you'll be with me, Emily. I want you by my side." His words hung in the air, and Emily's mind raced. She had never expected him to ask her something so serious, so bold. It wasn't a question she had ever thought she would have to answer. But now that it was in front of her, she realized how much she truly wanted this. How much she wanted him. She looked at him, the sincerity in his eyes reflecting her own feelings. She had spent so long doubting herself, questioning if she was enough, if she could belong in his world. But in this moment, it was clear to her. What they had wasn't about fitting into his life, or him fitting into hers. It was about building something together, something real. "Yes," she said, her voice soft but confident. "Yes, I want to be with you. I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Liam's face broke into a smile that reached his eyes and warmed her heart. He pulled her close, holding her in his arms as if the world outside didn't matter. And in that moment, nothing else did. They were just two people, in love, ready to take on whatever came next. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Emily realized that this wasn't just a dream anymore. It was their reality. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She knew that the path ahead would have its challenges, that their different worlds would sometimes clash.
But she also knew that they could face it together, hand in hand, just as they had from the very beginning. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness and new beginnings. Emily found herself moving into Liam's penthouse, a space that once felt out of reach, but now felt like home. She began to feel more comfortable in her new life, and the insecurities she once had started to melt away. As their relationship deepened, they found themselves talking about the future, about the things they both wanted, about the life they hoped to build together. Liam never once made her feel like she wasn't enough, like she didn't belong. And Emily realized that, despite all the differences between them, what mattered most was the love they shared. It was a love built on trust, honesty, and the promise of a future together. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony, watching the sunset over the city, Liam turned to her, his eyes soft with affection. "Emily," he said, taking her hand in his, "I know we've come a long way, and I want you to know that I'm so grateful for you. For everything. You've changed my life in ways I never thought possible." Emily smiled, squeezing his hand. "I feel the same way," she said. "You've shown me a world I never thought I could be a part of. And now, I can't imagine my life without you in it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the sound of the city below them filling the air. And in that moment, Emily knew this was just the beginning of their story. A story that, no matter what, would always be theirs. Months passed, and Emily's life had changed in ways she never thought possible. She and Liam had settled into a rhythm, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. They had faced their challenges, yes, but the love they shared was the kind of love that built bridges across any distance. Emily had found her place in Liam's world, not by trying to fit into it, but by being herself. And in return, Liam had become the person she leaned on, the one who had shown her that love wasn't about perfection or status, it was about trust, understanding, and companionship. One afternoon, as they walked through the park hand in hand, Liam stopped and turned to her with a smile that made Emily's heart race.
"Emily," he began, his voice filled with warmth, "I know we've talked about the future before, but I need to ask you something important. I can't imagine my life without you, and I want to make sure we're on the same page about everything." Emily's breath caught in her throat as she looked into his eyes, her heart pounding in her chest. She had known this moment was coming, but that didn't make it any less overwhelming. He took a deep breath, his smile never fading. "I want you to be my partner, in every sense of the word. I want to build a life with you, share everything with you. And most importantly, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Emily." His words hung in the air, and for a moment Emily was speechless. She had never imagined she would hear something so profound, so full of promise. The fear and uncertainty she had carried with her for so long began to fade into nothingness, replaced by the certainty that this was what she wanted too. She smiled, her eyes filled with tears. "I feel the same way, Liam. I want this. I want to build a life with you, too." She reached up, gently cupping his face in her hands, her fingers brushing against his skin. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you." Liam's expression softened, and he pulled her into a warm, tight embrace. "I love you too," he whispered. And in that moment, as they stood there in the park, surrounded by the world they had built together, Emily knew that everything was going to be all right. Days later, they took a trip to a small vineyard in the countryside, a place Liam had always wanted to visit. They spent the weekend exploring the vineyards, tasting wine, and talking about their future together. On the last evening of their trip, as the sun set behind the hills, Liam led Emily to a quiet spot overlooking the vineyard. There, he dropped to one knee, holding out a small velvet box. "Emily," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "I know this might seem fast, but I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Her heart skipped a beat as she looked down at the ring, the beautiful diamond sparkling in the fading light. She couldn't believe this was happening, that the life she had always dreamed of was now within reach. Without hesitation, she nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "Yes."
"Yes, I'll marry you." Liam smiled, relief and joy flooding his face as he slid the ring onto her finger. They stood there for a moment, letting the reality of the moment sink in, before Liam pulled her into another embrace, kissing her softly. As they made their way back to the city, hand in hand, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of peace she had never known before. She had found the love of her life, and together, they were ready to face whatever came next. There would be challenges, of course, but with Liam by her side, she knew she could overcome anything. They were partners in every sense of the word, and they had a lifetime ahead of them to write their story. Months later, as they stood at the altar, surrounded by friends and family, Emily couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. From the awkward blind date to this moment, her wedding day, everything had led her to this point. She looked at Liam, her soon-to-be husband, and felt a surge of love and gratitude. This was the beginning of their forever, and she couldn't wait to spend the rest of her life with him. As they exchanged vows, Emily knew that their journey was just beginning. There would be bumps along the way, but as long as they had each other, there was nothing they couldn't face together. And with that, they sealed their promises with a kiss, their future unfolding before them, full of love, hope, and endless possibilities.